You just put your phone down, maybe 30 seconds ago, maybe 5 minutes, and now there's this feeling. This quiet, heavy feeling sitting right in the center of your chest. You can't quite name it, but you know it. It's not sadness exactly. It's not anger, it's smaller than that. Literally, you feel smaller. Like someone reached inside you and turned a dial, and everything about you, your confidence, your ambition, your sense of self just got quieter, dimmer, less. You were fine before you picked up the phone, maybe even good. Maybe you had a productive morning. Maybe you laughed at something your kid said. Maybe you felt okay about how you looked today. And then you opened the app, and you scrolled. And now somehow, without anyone saying a single word to you directly, you feel like you're not enough. This is happening to you, right now, today, and probably yesterday, and the day before that, and most days for the last several years. Here's what nobody's telling you. The feeling you have after scrolling isn't random. It isn't a mood swing. It isn't because you're insecure or weak or overly sensitive. It's engineered. The shrinking sensation you feel has a neuroscience behind it, a psychology behind it, and a multi-billion-dollar business model behind it. You are experiencing a designed emotional response. And the people who designed it are making enormous amounts of money because you don't understand what's actually happening inside your brain when you scroll. The real problem isn't that you're spending too much time on social media. Everybody already knows that. Every article, every wellness influencer, every well-meaning friend has told you to put down the phone. That's the surface problem. That's the obvious thing everyone points at while missing the real damage. The real problem is that social media is systematically dismantling your sense of self, not in some dramatic, obvious way. In a quiet, invisible, daily erosion that you barely notice until one day you realize you don't remember what you actually like, what you actually want, who you actually are when you're not comparing yourself to a curated highlight reel of someone else's life. That's the real problem, not the screen time, the identity erosion. And it's worse than you think, because this isn't just about feeling bad after Instagram. The comparison cycle is rewiring your brain's reward system. It's changing how you evaluate your own worth. It's altering your relationship with achievement, beauty, success, and happiness. Every scroll trains your brain to measure yourself against an impossible, fictional standard. And every time you fall short, which is every single time because the standard isn't real, your brain logs that as evidence that you're not enough. Not successful enough, not pretty enough, not interesting enough, not living a big enough life. This data accumulates, it compounds, and it doesn't require your permission or awareness to do its damage. Research from the Royal Society for Public Health found that Instagram is the worst social media platform for young people's mental health, linked to increased anxiety, depression, loneliness, poor body image, and sleep disruption. A study from the University of Pennsylvania showed that limiting social media to 30 minutes per day significantly reduced loneliness and depression. The American Psychological Association reports that adults who use social media more than 2 hours daily are twice as likely to report feeling socially isolated. A meta-analysis of 77 studies published in the Journal of Affective Disorders confirmed a significant association between social media use and depressive symptoms, particularly in women. These aren't small numbers. This isn't a niche problem. This is an epidemic of shrinking. Millions of people are walking around feeling less than, and they don't even realize their phone is the thing doing it to them. You've been dealing with this for years, maybe since you first got a smartphone. That's potentially a decade or more of daily emotional erosion. A decade of unconsciously training your brain that everyone else is doing better. A decade of measuring your behind the scenes against their highlight reel. Think about what that's cost you. Really think about it. The confidence you've lost. The dreams you've quietly shelved because they suddenly seemed too small compared to what someone else was doing. The joy you failed to feel in your own life because it didn't look like the version of joy you saw online. The moments you couldn't be present for because you were thinking about how they'd look as a post. Every single day that passes without understanding this mechanism, the erosion continues. It compounds. It doesn't resolve itself. You're about to learn the neuroscience and psychology of why scrolling makes you feel small and the specific mindset shift that stops it. Not a digital detox. Not another lecture about screen time. Not some unrealistic advice to throw your phone in the ocean. A fundamental rewiring of how you process what you see online so it stops having power over how you feel about yourself. 5 core chapters that take you from understanding the trap to escaping it, to building an identity that social media can't touch. This isn't going to tell you to delete your apps and go live in the woods. That's not realistic. And honestly, that's not the problem. The problem isn't the technology. The problem is what the technology is doing to your internal operating system, your sense of self without your awareness or consent. This audiobook gives you that awareness. And then it gives you specific, practical tools to fight back. Here's what you'll learn. First, exactly what happens in your brain when you scroll and why it triggers that shrinking feeling. Second, how the comparison machine actually works and why willpower alone can't beat it. Third, how social media is quietly building a false identity for you that you didn't choose. Fourth, the specific mindset shift that changes your entire relationship with what you see online. Fifth, how to live bigger than your feed practically daily, starting today. By the end of this hour, you won't be cured of comparison. That's not a 1-hour transformation, but you'll understand the mechanism completely. You'll have specific tools to interrupt it. You'll know exactly why you've been feeling small and exactly how to start feeling like yourself again. That's not a small thing. That might be everything. Critical question right now. Are you willing to see what you've been avoiding? Because this audiobook is going to show you patterns you've been living inside without recognizing them. It's going to name feelings you've been having but couldn't articulate. It's going to challenge some beliefs you have about yourself that you think are your own but were actually planted by a feed algorithm. That's uncomfortable. Seeing yourself clearly is always uncomfortable, but it's the only way out of the trap. Most people won't do this work. They'll keep scrolling, keep feeling small, keep wondering why they're never satisfied with their own lives. They'll blame themselves for being insecure when the real answer is that they're being psychologically manipulated by design. Don't be most people. Be the person who understands the machine and chooses to step outside of it. That requires 1 hour of honest attention. That's it. 1 hour. Less than you'll spend on social media today, but enough time to understand what's been happening to you, to name the feeling, to see the mechanism, to learn the shift, to start reclaiming who you actually are underneath all the noise. Let's begin before another day passes where you feel small for no reason. Before another evening where you put down your phone and wonder why you're not happy with your life. Before the erosion goes any deeper, let's take your sense of self back. Actually take it back, starting now. Chapter 1: The Scroll Trap. What's actually happening to your brain? Before you can fix what's happening, you need to understand it. Not in a vague, social media is bad kind of way. In a precise, neurological, this is the exact mechanism kind of way. Because once you see how the machine works, it loses a massive amount of its power over you. Knowledge isn't just power here. Knowledge is protection. So let's get into the science. Let's look at exactly what happens inside your brain from the moment you pick up your phone to the moment you put it down feeling worse than when you started. The first thing to understand is dopamine. You've probably heard this word before, but most people misunderstand what it does. Dopamine is not a pleasure chemical. It's not the thing that makes you feel good when you eat chocolate or hear your favorite song. It's an anticipation chemical. It makes you want. It makes you seek. It makes you scroll. Every time you open a social media app, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine, not because what you're about to see will make you happy, but because your brain anticipates that it might. That anticipation is what keeps your thumb moving. Scroll, scroll, scroll. You're not looking for something specific. You're chasing the possibility that the next post will give you something, a laugh, an idea, a feeling, something. And that chase is the trap, because the next post doesn't satisfy the craving. It just creates more anticipation for the post after that. It's a loop with no exit. Here's what actually happens. Your brain operates on what psychologists call a variable reward schedule. That's the same mechanism that makes slot machines the most addictive form of gambling. You don't know what's coming next. It might be a friend's vacation photo. It might be a news article. It might be a stranger's body transformation story. It might be a meme. The unpredictability is what hooks you. Because your brain is wired to pay more attention to unpredictable rewards than predictable ones. If you knew exactly what was coming in your feed, you'd check it once and be done. But because every scroll reveals a surprise, your brain stays locked in. This isn't a character flaw. This is evolution. Your ancestors survived because their brains were tuned to notice novel, unpredictable information in their environment. The rustle in the bushes that might be a predator. The new berry that might be edible. Social media hijacks that survival mechanism and uses it to keep your eyes on a screen. But the dopamine chase is only the beginning. The entry fee, not the main event. Here's where the real damage happens. While you're scrolling, while your conscious mind is passively absorbing content, your brain is doing something else entirely beneath your awareness. It's comparing. Constantly, automatically, and ruthlessly. This is called social comparison theory, first proposed by psychologist Leon Festinger in 1954, and it describes a fundamental human drive to evaluate ourselves by comparing to others. This isn't something you choose to do. It's hardwired. It's as automatic as your brain processing the color of the sky. Every face you see, your brain compares to your face. Every body compared to your body. Every achievement, vacation, relationship, home, outfit, meal, all of it is being processed through a filter of how do I measure up. This is crucial. In real life, before smartphones, your comparison set was small and realistic. The people in your office, your neighborhood, your social circle, maybe 50 to 100 people. People you knew well enough to see their real lives, their struggles, their bad days, their failures alongside their successes. Your brain could handle that. It evolved to handle that. But social media exposes you to thousands of people daily. And not just any people. The most attractive, most successful, most curated versions of people who were specifically selected by an algorithm because their content generates engagement. You're not comparing yourself to average humans living average lives. You're comparing yourself to a statistically impossible composite of the most enviable moments from millions of lives. Your brain doesn't know the difference. It can't distinguish between a real person in your social group and a filtered image from a stranger on another continent. It processes each image, each story, each achievement as if it's a real person standing right next to you. And it runs the comparison. And you lose every single time because you can't beat a fiction. Nobody can. Let's talk about what happens neurologically when you consistently lose social comparisons. Your brain has a region called the ventral striatum that processes social reward and status. When you perceive yourself as equal to or higher status than those around you, activity in this region increases. You feel good, confident, secure. When you perceive yourself as lower status, which is what happens during P-word social comparison, activity in this region decreases. Simultaneously, your anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain that processes social pain, lights up. This is the same region that activates when you experience physical pain. The exact same region. Let that sink in. Your brain processes unfavorable social comparison the same way it processes getting hurt. So when you feel that sting after seeing someone's perfect life online, that's not you being dramatic. That's not you being too sensitive. That's your brain literally registering pain. Real, measurable, neurological pain. Most people miss this. The damage isn't just emotional, it's cognitive. It changes how you think, not just how you feel. Repeated exposure to upward social comparisons, seeing people you perceive as doing better than you, actually alters your cognitive patterns over time. Research published in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology shows that habitual social comparison is linked to increased rumination. That means you don't just feel bad in the moment of scrolling. Your brain starts looping. You think about the comparison again later, while you're cooking dinner, while you're trying to fall asleep. You replay it. You elaborate on it. You create entire narratives about your own inadequacy based on a 30-second exposure to someone else's curated content. This rumination feeds anxiety. It feeds depression. It feeds the quiet, persistent belief that your life isn't enough. And it happens automatically, without you realizing that a single image from 2 hours ago is still running your emotional state. There's another mechanism at work here, and it's one almost nobody talks about. It's called the positivity bias in self-presentation. Studies show that people share positive content on social media roughly 4-to-1 compared to negative content. People post the vacation, not the credit card bill that followed. They post the engagement ring, not the argument the night before. They post the promotion, not the 6 months of burnout that preceded it. They post the beautiful meal, not the kitchen full of dirty dishes. They post the baby's first steps, not the 2 hours of crying that came after. This means your feed is a systematically distorted sample of human experience. You're seeing the top 1% of everyone's life, all the time, presented as if it's their normal Tuesday. And your brain, which evolved in a world where what you saw was what was real, where the only information available about other people came from direct, unfiltered observation, takes it all at face value. It doesn't automatically apply a filter. It doesn't whisper, "This is probably staged." It doesn't adjust for curation or editing or selective posting. It just files it as data. One more beautiful person. One more perfect life. One more person doing better than you. And after thousands and thousands of data points, accumulated over months and years, the conclusion your brain draws is devastating but mathematically logical. Everyone is doing better than you. Everyone is happier. Everyone is more successful. Everyone has it more together. The conclusion is wrong, of course, catastrophically wrong. But the data your brain is working with is so thoroughly skewed that the wrong conclusion is the only one the math can produce. Now let's talk about what all of this means for your sense of self. Psychologists use a concept called self-discrepancy theory, developed by E. Torrey Higgins in 1987. You have 3 selves that your brain is constantly tracking and comparing. Your actual self is who you are right now, your real abilities, your real appearance, your real achievements, your real life. Your ideal self is who you want to be, your aspirations, your dreams, your vision of your best life. And your ought self is who you think you should be, the standards imposed on you by society, by your family, by your culture, by the expectations of others. In a healthy psychological state, the gaps between these 3 selves are manageable, motivating even. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is what drives growth. But social media has blown these gaps wide open. Every post showing someone's perfect body doesn't just make you feel bad in the moment. It raises the bar for your ideal self, permanently. It redefines what you think a good body looks like, and your brain updates its model accordingly. Every post showing someone's perfect career raises the bar for your ought self. It redefines what you think you should have achieved by now. And the gap between your actual self and these constantly inflating standards grows wider every single day. Every scroll makes it worse. That gap, the ever-widening canyon between who you are and who your brain thinks you should be, is what you're feeling when you feel small after scrolling. That gap is the shrinking. It's the felt experience of measuring your real life against an unreal standard and coming up short every single time. The real reason you feel small after scrolling isn't because you're seeing things you want. It's because your brain is computing a gap between who you are and who you think you should be, and social media is making that gap wider every time you open an app. The shrinking feeling isn't weakness. It's math. Bad math, based on bad data, computed by a brain that wasn't designed for this environment. Here's what makes this especially insidious. The entire process is invisible. You don't consciously think, I'm now going to compare myself to this person and feel inferior. You just scroll, and then you feel it, that heaviness, that quiet voice that says, why isn't my life like that? You can't fight what you can't see. And until right now, until this chapter, you couldn't see it. Now you can. You understand the dopamine loop that keeps you scrolling. You understand the automatic comparison mechanism that runs beneath your awareness. You understand how a distorted data set creates a distorted self-image. You understand that the shrinking feeling is a neurological response, not a personal failure. But understanding the trap is only the first step, because there's a machine behind all of this that's designed to keep you in it. An algorithm, a business model, and a psychological manipulation system that profits directly from your insecurity. That's what we're looking at next. Chapter 2: The Comparison Machine You Carry in Your Pocket. Now you understand what's happening inside your brain, but your brain isn't operating in a vacuum. It's operating inside an environment that was meticulously designed to exploit every single vulnerability we just talked about. So let's talk about the machine. The comparison machine you carry in your pocket every day, everywhere you go. Because this isn't accidental. This isn't a side effect. This is architecture. The first thing you need to understand is that social media platforms are not communication tools. They were once. In the beginning, they were built to connect people, to share updates with friends, to stay in touch. But they evolved. Today, they are attention extraction systems. Their primary product isn't connection, it's your attention, your eyeball time, and their primary business model is selling that attention to advertisers. The longer you scroll, the more ads you see, the more money they make. This single economic reality, attention equals revenue, shapes every design decision, every algorithm update, every new feature on every platform. Everything is optimized for one outcome, keeping you scrolling for as long as possible. This is crucial. When you understand the business model, you understand why the comparison problem will never be fixed by the platforms themselves. Think about it. Comparison drives engagement. When you see someone with a better life than yours, you don't close the app. You scroll more. You look at more profiles. You spend more time trying to figure out what they have that you don't. You click on their page. You look at their followers. You examine their photos. The feeling of inadequacy doesn't push you away from the platform. It pulls you deeper in. Your insecurity is their engagement metric. Your self-doubt is their quarterly earnings. This is not a bug in the system. This is the core feature. Let's talk about how the algorithm works in practice. Every social media platform uses machine learning to decide what appears in your feed. The algorithm doesn't care about your mental health. It doesn't care about your self-esteem. It doesn't have an opinion about what's good for you. It cares about one metric, engagement. It tracks what you look at, how long you look at it, whether you like it, share it, comment on it, or save it. And then it gives you more of whatever kept your attention longest. Here's where the problem becomes a trap. Research shows that people spend significantly more time looking at content that triggers social comparison than content that doesn't. You linger on the photo of the woman with the flawless skin. You pause on the post about the couple's dream vacation. You stare at the reel of someone's incredible home renovation. You reread the caption about someone's big promotion. You don't enjoy it, but you can't look away. And the algorithm reads that attention as a preference. So it gives you more beautiful people, more perfect lives, more evidence that you're falling behind. The algorithm doesn't know it's hurting you. It just knows you're watching. Imagine you're in a room, and someone is standing in front of you showing you photos, one by one. But this person has studied you. They've analyzed your behavior for months. They know exactly what makes you feel inadequate. They know your insecurities about your body, your career, your relationship, your parenting, your home, your creativity. And they deliberately choose photos that trigger those exact insecurities, not to hurt you, not out of malice, to keep you looking. Because the longer you look, the more money they make. They smile at you the whole time. They tell you it's for your benefit. They call it personalized content. That's the algorithm. That's what you're interacting with every single time you open an app. And you've been standing in that room for years. Most people miss this. The content you see isn't a random sample of what's out there. It's a curated selection designed to maximize your emotional response. And the emotions that generate the most engagement are not positive ones. Research on social media engagement patterns shows that content triggering aspirational envy, insecurity, outrage, and fear of missing out keeps users on platforms longer than content triggering joy, satisfaction, or contentment. Contentment makes you put the phone down. Insecurity makes you keep scrolling. So your feed is systematically tilted toward content that makes you feel worse, not better. The algorithm learned this through billions of interactions. It doesn't need a psychology degree. It has something better: data. More behavioral data than any psychologist in history has ever had access to. And it uses that data to find your exact emotional vulnerabilities and exploit them with surgical precision. Let's be honest about something you've probably noticed. You open the app feeling fine. 20 minutes later, you feel terrible. And yet you do it again the next day, and the next, and the next. This isn't stupidity. This isn't lack of discipline. This is addiction engineering. Social media platforms employ attention engineers and behavioral designers, people whose literal job title involves making the app more compulsive. They use the same psychological principles that make gambling addictive: variable rewards, which we already discussed. Social validation loops, where your brain craves the approval that comes from likes and comments. Loss aversion, where the fear of missing out keeps you checking. The red notification badge uses the same color psychology that casinos use to keep players alert and activated. The pull-to-refresh mechanism mimics the physical gesture of pulling a slot machine lever. The infinite scroll ensures there's never a natural stopping point, unlike a book or a newspaper that has a last page. The like count activates the same neural circuits as a small win at the blackjack table. These aren't coincidences. These are deliberate design choices made by people who understand your psychology better than you do. Here's what actually happens when you post something yourself. This is the other side of the machine, and it's just as toxic. You upload a photo. Maybe it took you 12 tries to get the right angle. Maybe you edited it for 20 minutes, and then you post it, and then you wait. You check to see who liked it, how many people liked it, whether that specific person liked it. Your brain is now in a state of heightened arousal, waiting for social validation. When the likes come in, you get a dopamine hit, a small rush of approval. When they don't come as fast as expected, you feel rejection, not mild disappointment. Actual social rejection, processed by the same brain regions that handle being excluded from a group. Studies using fMRI brain scans show that receiving few likes on social media activates the same neural pathways as being left out of a social gathering. Your ancient brain, the one that evolved in tribes of 150 people where social exclusion meant death, interprets low engagement as tribal rejection, low status, danger. This creates a vicious cycle that feeds the comparison machine perfectly. You compare yourself to others, which makes you feel small. Then you post content trying to present your best self, seeking validation to counteract that feeling. You spend 20 minutes choosing the right filter. You write and rewrite the caption. You pick the most flattering angle. Then you post and you wait. And you wait anxiously for feedback, your mood hanging on a number. You check back 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, an hour later. Then you compare the feedback you got to the feedback others get. She posted yesterday and already has 400 likes. I've been up for 3 hours and I have 42. Then you feel smaller. Then you scroll more, comparing more, feeling worse, posting more, seeking more validation. The machine feeds itself. Every input creates output that becomes the next input. Every comparison generates a post that generates a comparison. And it's running inside your pocket 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There is no off switch. There is no break. There is no season where the machine rests. It's always on, and so is the erosion. Let's talk about the content creators you're comparing yourself to. The influencers with the seemingly perfect lives. Here's what you need to know. A survey of over 1,000 influencers found that the vast majority reported that their content does not reflect their actual daily lives. They have professional lighting, professional photographers, professional editing apps. They take 30, 50, sometimes 100 photos to post one. They stage their homes before filming. They rent locations. They borrow clothes. They use filters that reshape their faces and bodies. They time their posts for maximum engagement. They delete content that doesn't perform well. What you're seeing is not a life. It's a production. You're comparing your real life, messy, imperfect, unfiltered, to their job. Their full-time, often well-paid job is to look like they have a perfect life. And you're watching their work product and wondering why your behind the scenes doesn't look as good. The real reason willpower alone can't beat this is because you're fighting a machine, not a person, not a simple temptation. A machine backed by hundreds of billions of dollars of research and development, staffed by some of the smartest engineers and psychologists on the planet, and optimized by artificial intelligence that processes more data about human behavior than any system in human history. You can't outthink it by deciding to compare less. That's like deciding not to be hungry while someone waves your favorite meal in front of your face, in high definition, with perfect lighting, every 6 seconds. Stop lying to yours. LF about this. You are not weak for being affected. You are a human brain operating in an environment that was designed by teams of experts specifically to exploit your psychological vulnerabilities. Acknowledging this isn't making excuses. It's seeing clearly. The game is rigged, and the house always wins unless you understand how the game works and fundamentally change how you play it. You now understand the trap inside your brain and the machine outside of it. But there's a third layer, a deeper layer, and this is where the real cost lies. The real damage isn't just that you feel bad after scrolling. It's that scrolling is slowly, invisibly changing who you think you are. That's what we need to face next. Chapter 3: The Identity You're Building Without Knowing IT. This is the part most people skip. Don't. Because what we're about to talk about is the real cost, not the momentary bad feeling that passes, not the 20 minutes of wasted time you could have spent doing something else. The real cost, the one that compounds, the one that reshapes your life. Social media is building an identity for you, and you didn't choose it, you didn't approve it, you might not even recognize it, but it's there, running in the background like software you never installed. And it's making decisions for you. Let's start with how identity actually works. Your sense of self isn't fixed. It isn't something you were born with that stays constant throughout your life like your blood type. It's constructed. Every day, through a process psychologists call identity negotiation, your brain assembles and reassembles your sense of who you are from the feedback you receive, the comparisons you make, the experiences you have, and the stories you tell yourself about all of it. This process is mostly unconscious. You don't sit down in the morning and deliberately decide who you are. Your brain does it automatically, based on data it collects from your environment. Here's what actually happens. Social media has become the single largest environment from which your brain collects identity data. Think about how much time you spend on it compared to other sources of self-information. For the average adult, it's over 2 hours a day. That's over 14 hours a week, over 730 hours a year. In that time, your brain is absorbing thousands upon thousands of images, stories, achievements, and comparisons. And it's using all of that data to construct your self-concept, the picture of who you are, what you're worth, where you stand. Your brain isn't just mindlessly scrolling. It's building a model of you based on where you fall in the comparison hierarchy it's computing without your awareness. Let's be specific about what this looks like in your daily life. You see a fitness influencer with an incredible body. Your brain doesn't just note it and move on. Your brain files it under what a good body looks like, and then compares it to your body. After one post, the effect is small. But after seeing hundreds of these bodies over weeks and months, your brain's reference point for normal shifts dramatically. Suddenly, your actual, healthy, functioning body, the body that carries you through your life, feels inadequate. Not because it changed, because the standard your brain is measuring it against changed. This is called reference point adaptation, and it's happening across every single dimension of your life. Your home doesn't feel nice enough because you've seen 1,000 dream homes. Your career doesn't feel successful enough because you've seen 1,000 celebration posts. Your relationship doesn't feel romantic enough because you've seen 1,000 couple goals. Your parenting doesn't feel good enough because you've seen 1,000 picture-perfect family moments. None of your actual reality changed. The measuring stick did. This is crucial. You're not just feeling bad about specific things. Your entire baseline for what's acceptable, what's normal, what's enough, is being recalibrated upward constantly by a relentless stream of exceptional content that your brain treats as normal. It's as if someone secretly raised the bar on every area of your life by 6 inches every month. You keep jumping the same height. You keep doing the same quality of work. You keep living the same quality of life. But the bar keeps rising, and you keep feeling like you're failing. You're not failing. The bar is rigged. Most people miss this about the identity construction process. It doesn't just affect how you see yourself. It affects what you want. Your desires themselves, the things you think you want from life, are being shaped by social media. You think you want the minimalist apartment because it appeals to your aesthetic sense. But did it before you saw 1,000 posts about minimalist living? You think you want to start a business because you're entrepreneurial by nature. But would you feel that urgency if you weren't seeing 20-something-year-olds celebrating their first million every day? You think you want to travel more because you love adventure. But did the specific destinations on your bucket list come from your own curiosity or from someone else's travel feed? You think you want a certain kind of relationship, a certain kind of body, a certain kind of morning routine. But whose life are you actually designing? Yours, or a composite of everyone else's? This is identity colonization. Your authentic desires, preferences, and values are being quietly overwritten by desires, preferences, and values that were planted by content you consumed without critical awareness. And the most dangerous part, you genuinely can't tell he difference. You believe these are your own thoughts, your own wants, your own goals. They feel like they came from inside you. They feel organic, natural, yours. But when you trace them back honestly, really honestly, they lead to a feed, not to your actual lived experience. Not to a moment of personal discovery or deep self-reflection. To a post you saw 3 months ago that planted a seed. And that seed grew into a desire you now mistake for your own. Here's a test. Think about something you want right now, something you've been wanting for a while. Now ask yourself, when did I first want this? Was it before or after I started seeing it on social media? Was there a life experience that sparked this desire, or was there a piece of content? For most people, most of the time, the honest answer is uncomfortable. Their wants are echoes of other people's posts. Their goals are reflections of other people's achievements. Their vision of a good life is a collage of other people's curated moments. That's not living. That's mirroring. And you deserve more than a mirrored life. Let me show you what this looks like in a typical morning. You wake up on a Saturday. Your first instinct is to reach for your phone. You scroll for 15 minutes. You see someone's aesthetic brunch with fresh flowers and latte art. Someone's morning workout with perfect form in a beautiful gym. Someone's productive journal setup with color-coded pages and inspirational quotes. Now, without realizing it, your brain has been handed a template for what a good Saturday morning looks like. And your actual Saturday morning, still in pajamas, cereal on the couch, kid watching cartoons, coffee in a chipped mug, suddenly feels wrong. Lazy, unambitious, not because it's wrong, but because it doesn't match the template you just absorbed. You feel a pull to perform your morning differently, to make it worthy, to make it postable. And slowly, over months and years of these small moments, you stop living your life and start curating it. You start optimizing for appearance instead of experience. You know this. You felt this pull, the impulse to take a photo of your food before eating it, the thought about whether an experience is postable before you've even finished experiencing it. The subtle disappointment when a beautiful sunset happens but the lighting isn't right for a photo. The nagging feeling that if it's not documented, it didn't really count. That's not vanity. That's not narcissism. That's the symptom of an identity crisis so widespread that we've normalized it. You're living a performance instead of a life. And the audience is mostly strangers who won't remember your post by tomorrow. Here's what actually happens to your psychological well-being when your identity is externally constructed rather than internally grounded. Psychologist Carl Rogers described the concept of the real self versus the ideal self. When these two are close together, you experience what he called congruence, a sense of authenticity, inner peace, alignment between who you are and how you live. When they're far apart, you experience incongruence, anxiety, dissatisfaction, a nagging feeling that something is wrong even when nothing in your external circumstances has technically changed. Social media inflates the ideal self beyond anything Rogers could have imagined. The gap between who you are and who you think you should be becomes a canyon, and you live in that canyon. That's the shrinking feeling. It's the felt experience of living in a gap between your reality and an impossible standard you didn't consciously choose. Let's talk about what this does to your decision-making. When your identity is externally constructed, you lose access to your own inner compass. You don't know what you actually want because you can't separate your authentic desires from the implanted ones. So you chase goals that look good on paper and feel empty when you achieve them. You make choices based on what will look impressive rather than what will make you fulfilled. You optimize your life for the approval of people you've never met at the expense of the life that would actually make you happy. And then you wonder why reaching the goal didn't feel like you expected it to. And here's the tragic irony that sits at the center of all of this. The people whose lives you're comparing yours to, they're doing the exact same thing. They're comparing themselves to other people. They're curating their content to look better than they feel. They're performing happiness while experiencing the same inadequacy you experience. The influencer with the perfect body, she compares herself to other influencers with different perfect bodies. The entrepreneur celebrating a milestone. He's scrolling through the feeds of entrepreneurs who are 5 years ahead of him, feeling exactly what you feel. The couple with the dream vacation photos. They spent half the trip arguing about the itinerary and the other half posing for content. Everyone's watching everyone else's highlight reel and assuming everyone else's highlight reel is real life. It's a hall of mirrors where everyone sees a distorted reflection and assumes everyone else's reflection is accurate. Nobody's winning this game. Not the people at the top. Not the people at the bottom. Not the people in between. Because the game was never designed to have winners. It was designed to have users. It was designed to have scrollers. And every person scrolling, from the viewer with 50 followers to the creator with 5 million, is caught in the same trap. The only difference is the size of the cage. Let me name what's been taken from you. Your confidence in your own choices. Your ability to feel satisfied with what you have. Your connection to your actual desires and values, Your capacity to be fully present in your own life without measuring it against a fictional standard. Your deep, quiet sense that you are enough exactly as you are without performing or proving or posting. These aren't small losses. These are the foundations of a meaningful, fulfilling life. And they've been eroded so gradually that you might not have noticed they were disappearing until right now. Understanding the brain trap was step 1. Understanding the machine was step 2. Understanding the identity cost is step 3. But now comes the most important part, the shift. The actual, practical, neurologically grounded mindset shift that changes your relationship with everything you just learned. This is what you came here for. Let's go. Chapter 4. The Mindset Shift from Consumer to Creator of Your Own Worth. Everything you've learned so far has been about understanding the problem, the brain science, the machine design, the identity erosion, all essential, but understanding a trap doesn't get you out of it. Now it's time to actually get out. And the exit isn't where you've been told to look. It isn't a screen time limit. It isn't an app blocker. It isn't a 30-day detox. Those things might help around the edges, but they don't address the core issue. They're bandages on a wound that needs surgery. The core issue is this: you've been consuming your sense of self, taking it in from the outside, absorbing it from feeds and algorithms and other people's curated lives. The mindset shift is this: you stop consuming your identity and you start creating it, deliberately, consciously, on your own terms. That's the shift, from consumer to creator, and it changes everything. Let me explain what this means in practice. Right now, your self-worth operates on what I'll call the absorption model. You scroll. You absorb information about other people's lives, bodies, achievements, relationships. Your brain compares. Your self-worth adjusts based on where you fall in the comparison. Up when you see someone doing worse than you, down when you see someone doing better. Your sense of self is reactive. It depends entirely on the input. Change the input and your self-worth changes. That's why you can feel confident in the morning and crushed by noon after 20 minutes of scrolling. Your worth isn't anchored to anything solid. It's floating. And the current of social media is pulling it wherever the algorithm decides to take it today. This is crucial. The absorption model doesn't work. It can never work. Not because you're doing it wrong, because it's structurally broken. You can never control the input completely. You can never curate your feed perfectly enough to only encounter things that make you feel good about yourself. And even if you could, your self-worth would still be dependent on external data. It would still be fragile. It would still be someone else's to take away with a single post. The creation model is fundamentally different. In the creation model, your self-worth isn't based on where you fall in a comparison hierarchy. It's based on what you build, what you choose, what you value, and how aligned you are with your own authentic standards. Not standards imposed by a feed. Not standards absorbed from influencers. Your standards. Standards you consciously choose based on what actually matters to you when you strip away all the noise. Let me make this concrete with an example. Under the absorption model, you see a woman on Instagram who renovated her home beautifully. Your brain compares her home to your home. You feel small. Your self-worth dips. You think about all the things wrong with your space. Under the creation model, you see the same post, But instead of automatically comparing, you ask a different question. Not, how does my home compare to hers? But what do I actually want my home to feel like? The first question puts you in a hierarchy. You're either above or below. The second question puts you in your own story. There's no above or below. There's only you and your values. The first question has a winner and a loser. The second question only has you making choices. Here's what actually happens in your brain when you shift from comparison-based thinking to self-referential thinking. Neuroscience research shows that when you compare yourself to others, your brain activates the medial prefrontal cortex in a mode associated with social evaluation and judgment. When you shift to self-referential thinking, asking what you want, what you value, what aligns with your own goals, the same brain region activates, but in a fundamentally different mode. One associated with self-knowledge and self-understanding rather than self-judgment. The neural pathway is literally different. You're using the same brain hardware but running completely different software, and the emotional output changes accordingly. Let me give you the practical framework. It has 4 components, and each one targets a specific part of the problem. The first component is the comparison interrupt. This is the moment of awareness where you catch the comparison happening in real time and consciously redirect it. It works like this. You're scrolling. You see content that triggers comparison. You notice the feeling, that shrinking, that pang, that quiet "I'm not enough" sensation in your chest. Instead of continuing to scroll and letting the feeling sink in, you pause. You name what just happened. I just compared myself to that person. That's it. Just naming it. This isn't complicated, but it's powerful because naming activates your prefrontal cortex, your rational executive brain, which gives you a moment of choice before the emotional reaction takes over your mood. D for the next hour. You don't have to do anything else in that moment. Just notice and name. Research on affect labeling in mindfulness studies shows that the act of labeling an emotion as it occurs reduces its intensity by up to 40%. Simply saying to yourself, "I'm comparing," weakens the comparison's emotional grip before it can spiral into rumination. The second component is the source question. After you interrupt the comparison, you ask yourself, what do I actually want here? Not what she has, not what he achieved, not what they posted. What do you want for yourself? Based on your values, in your actual life, with your actual resources, in your actual circumstances. This question does something powerful. It forces your brain out of comparison mode, where it's evaluating you against others, and into creation mode, where it's orienting you toward your own goals. It redirects your attention from the external standard to your internal compass. And every time you ask it, you strengthen the neural pathway of self-referential thinking over social comparison. Over time, this becomes automatic. The comparison fires and your brain immediately asks, "But what do I actually want?" Most people miss this about the mindset shift. It's not about becoming indifferent to other people's lives. It's not about pretending you don't see what they have. It's not about suppressing the comparison or forcing positivity. It's about changing the question your brain asks in response to the comparison trigger. The comparison will still happen automatically. That's hardwired. You can't stop it. But what you do with it, the question you ask next, is not hardwired. That's a choice. And the more you practice the new response, the more automatic it becomes. You're not fighting your brain, you're training it. The third component is evidence collection. Here's the reality. Your brain has spent years, possibly over a decade, collecting evidence that you're not enough. Every comparison, every unfavorable outcome, every moment of feeling small, your brain stored all of it in a mental file labeled "Proof I'm Inadequate." That file is thick. It's got years of data. Every time you scrolled and felt that sting, your brain added a page. Every time you saw someone doing better and felt that sinking, another page. The file has grown so large that your brain now references it automatically when evaluating your worth. It doesn't need to compare anymore in real time. It just checks the file and says, based on extensive evidence, you're not enough. That's what you're fighting against. And you can't beat it by arguing with it. You have to out-evidence it. Now you need to deliberately, systematically collect counter-evidence. Not affirmations, not wishful thinking, not positive self-talk that sounds nice but that you don't actually believe. Actual, concrete evidence of who you are and what you've built and what you're capable of. This means keeping a daily record. It can be written in a journal, typed in your phone, or even just mental, of 3 specific things. Something you created today, something you chose today, and something you valued today. Created doesn't mean artistic or impressive. It means you produced something, a meal, a conversation, a solved problem at work, a clean room, an email that moved a project forward. Chose means you made a conscious decision that was aligned with your values, even a small one. Valued means you noticed something in your actual, real, unfiltered life that mattered to you. A moment with your child, a good cup of coffee, a song that made you feel something. This practice builds what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief in your own capacity to produce outcomes. And unlike comparison-based self-esteem, which rises and falls with every scroll, self-efficacy is internally generated. Nobody's post can take it from you, because it's based on what you did, not on what they did. The fourth component is the identity anchor. This is a conscious, deliberate statement of who you are that doesn't depend on any external comparison. Not "I'm as good as her," not "I'm better than them," not "I'm enough" as a vague affirmation. Something specific and grounded like, "I'm a person who builds a life that fits me," or "I'm a person who values depth over display," or "I'm a person who defines success by my own terms, not someone else's feed." The statement must be comparison-free. It must be true right now, today, not aspirational. And it must be something that no one else's achievement, no matter how impressive, can invalidate. Because it's about your values, not your rank. Let's be honest about something. This shift is not easy, and anyone who tells you it hasn't actually done it. You've spent years in the absorption model. Your neural pathways for comparison are deep and well-traveled, like a highway your brain has been driving on for a decade. The creation model requires building new pathways. And that takes repetition, patience, and tolerance for imperfection. There will be days when you fall right back into comparing and feel that familiar shrinking. That's normal. That's not failure. That's the process of rewiring. Every time you catch the comparison and redirect, even if the feeling doesn't change immediately, you're carving the new pathway a little deeper. Eventually, the new pathway becomes the default route, but it takes time, and it takes practice. The real reason this shift works on a neurological level is that it addresses the root cause, not the symptom. Screen time limits address the exposure to comparison triggers. The mindset shift addresses how your brain processes those triggers. You can't control every image you'll ever see for the rest of your life, but you can fundamentally change what your brain does with those images when it encounters them. That's the shift. That's where the real power is. That's what the comparison machine can't touch, because it lives inside you, not inside the app. You now have the understanding and the framework, but frameworks only matter when they become daily practice. Otherwise, they're just interesting ideas you heard once. The final chapter is about integration, taking everything you've learned and building it into a life that's genuinely, sustainably bigger than any feed. Let's finish this. Chapter 5: Living Bigger Than Your Feed. Understanding the trap, understanding the machine, understanding the identity cost, learning the mindset shift, all of that matters deeply. But none of it matters at all if you close this audiobook and go back to scrolling exactly the same way tomorrow. Information without implementation is just entertainment, and you already have plenty of entertainment. So this final chapter is about integration. Practical, daily, sustainable integration. How to actually live this. Not as a 30-day challenge. Not as a New Year's resolution that fades by February. As a permanent upgrade to how you operate in a world designed to make you feel small. The first practice is the morning anchor. This is the foundation of everything else, and it's non-negotiable if you're serious about this shift. Before you look at any social media, any at all, not even a quick check, you spend 2 minutes anchoring in your own life. Not someone else's. Yours. This can be as simple as lying in bed for 2 minutes with your phone still face down and mentally answering 3 questions. What am I working toward right now? What matters to me today, specifically today? What am I grateful for that I already have? These 3 questions activate self-referential thinking before the comparison machine has a chance to boot up. They prime your brain to process the day through your own values rather than through external standards. They set an internal anchor point that the algorithm has to compete with rather than define. This is crucial. The order matters more than you think. If the first thing you do in the morning is scroll, your brain's first data input for the day is other people's lives. Your self-concept for the entire day is now being built on a foundation of comparison. Every subsequent thought runs through that filter. If the first thing you do is anchor in your own identity, what you're building, what matters, what you have, your brain starts the day from a position of self-knowledge. Every comparison you encounter after that hits differently because your internal foundation is already set. Think of it like this. It's the difference between walking into a party knowing who you are versus walking into a party, hoping other people will tell you. The second practice is intentional scrolling. This doesn't mean timing yourself with an app or setting arbitrary limits. Those are external controls that break the moment you turn them off. They don't change anything inside you. Intentional scrolling means changing why you scroll. Most people scroll reactively. They're bored, they're anxious, they're avoiding a task, they're lonely, or they're just habituated. The phone is there, so they pick it up. There's no purpose, no intention, no direction. They open the app and the algorithm takes over, steering them wherever it wants. Intentional scrolling means asking one simple question before you open any app. What am I looking for right now? If the answer is nothing or I don't know, put the phone down. If the answer is inspiration for my project, scroll with that specific lens and stop when you have it. If the answer is connection with my friend, go directly to messages instead of the feed. The question creates a filter. It transforms you from a passive consumer being fed content into an active navigator choosing content. And it makes it dramatically harder for the algorithm to drag you into comparison territory, because you entered the app with a destination, not as a wanderer. Most people miss this about sustainable behavior change. The goal isn't to eliminate social media from your life. For most people, that's unrealistic and unnecessary. It also frames the technology as the enemy when the real enemy is the unconscious processing pattern, the automatic comparison, the unanchored identity, the reactive self-worth. The goal is to change your relationship with the technology, to go from being used by the platform to using the platform, to go from passive to active, from unconscious to conscious. That's a fundamental power shift, and it starts with the incredibly simple act of asking why before you scroll. The third practice is the comparison journal. This sounds tedious. It sounds like homework, but bear with me because it's one of the most powerful diagnostic tools in this entire framework. For 1 week, just 7 days, not forever, write down every comparison you catch yourself making while scrolling. Just a quick note. What you saw, what you compared it to in your own life, what you felt afterward. You don't have to analyze it in the moment, just record it. After 7 days, sit down and look at the patterns. You'll discover something remarkable. The same insecurities get triggered over and over. The same types of content make you feel small. The same areas of your life feel inadequate. Maybe it's body image. Maybe it's career progress. Maybe it's relationship quality. Maybe it's lifestyle or home. Or parenting. Whatever it is, the pattern will be clear. This isn't a diagnosis of what's wrong with you. It's a map of where your identity is most externally dependent. Those are the exact areas where you most need to build internal anchors using the creation framework from the last chapter. The comparison journal tells you precisely where to focus your energy. The fourth practice is what I call the creation hour. Once a day, or at minimum once a week, spend 1 uninterrupted hour creating something instead of consuming something. It doesn't matter what you create. Write something, cook a new recipe, draw or sketch, build or fix something in your home. Garden, work on a side project, reorganize a room, play an instrument, craft, design. The specific activity doesn't matter. What matters is the mode your brain is in. When you consume content, your brain is in evaluation mode, judging, comparing, ranking. When you create, your brain is in agency mode, deciding, solving, expressing. There's no comparison happening during genuine creation because you're inside the experience, not outside observing someone else's experience and measuring yourself against it. Over time, the creation hour becomes the psychological counterweight to the consumption hours. It rebuilds your sense of yourself as someone who produces, who makes things, who acts on the world, not just someone who watches other people act on the world. Here's what actually happens when you consistently practice creation over consumption. Your self-concept undergoes a fundamental shift from what psychologists call an external locus of evaluation to an internal locus. That means you gradually stop measuring yourself primarily by outside standards, how you compare, how many likes you get, how your life looks to observers, and start measuring yourself primarily by your own standards. What you built, what you chose, how aligned your day was with your values. This shift feels subtle at first. You might not notice it happening. But one day, a few weeks in, you'll scroll past something that would have ruined your mood before, and you'll realize you barely registered it. Not because you suppressed the reaction, because your identity simply isn't anchored to that comparison anymore. It's anchored to what you created this morning, to the project you're building, to the choice you made yesterday that aligned with who you want to be. The comparison still happens, but it lands on solid ground instead of quicksand. And when that shift takes hold, the scrolling changes profoundly. You can look at someone's beautiful home and think, "That's lovely," without the automatic follow-up of "my home isn't good enough." You can see someone's achievement and feel genuine happiness for them without subtracting it from your own worth. You can encounter someone living a completely different kind of life and feel curiosity instead of inadequacy. The comparison still registers, it always will, as long as you have a human brain. But it stops defining you. It becomes noise rather than signal, background rather than foreground, weather rather than a verdict. The fifth practice is honest feed curation. Go through every single account you follow and ask one question. Do I consistently feel bigger or smaller after seeing this person's content? Not is their content interesting. Not do they post useful information. Not are they a good person. Do you feel bigger or smaller? If you consistently feel smaller after seeing their posts, even if the content is objectively good, even if you admire them, even if everyone else follows them, unfollow. This isn't about being petty or jealous or closed-minded. It's about taking direct responsibility for the data your brain is using to construct your identity every single day. You wouldn't keep eating food that consistently made you sick and call it good nutrition just because other people enjoy it. Don't consume content that consistently makes you feel inadequate and call it staying informed. The sixth practice is real-world recalibration. This is the antidote to the digital distortion, and it's simpler than anything else on this list. Spend deliberate, phone-free time in real-world social environments where you can see actual humans living actual lives, not curated, not filtered, not optimized for engagement, not angled for flattering light. Go to a coffee shop and look around at real people. Go to a park on a Saturday, a grocery store on a weekday evening, a community event, a neighborhood walk. What you'll see is the reality that social media systematically erases. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, and most of them look reasonably content. Not ecstatic, not Instagram perfect, not living their best life every second, just fine, normal, human, wearing comfortable clothes, having regular conversations, eating regular meals, living in regular homes, and looking for the most part at peace with it. Your brain desperately needs this data. It's been starved of it. For years, the dominant data stream has been the curated, filtered, algorithm-selected fiction of social media. Your reference points are skewed so far from reality that actual reality now feels like underperformance. Real-world recalibration corrects this. It recalibrates your brain's reference points with actual reality, not algorithmically curated fiction that represents the top fraction of a percent of human experience. After even 30 minutes of observing real people living real lives, you'll feel something shift, a quiet exhale, a loosening of the standard, a sense that maybe, just maybe, your normal life is more normal and more okay than your feed has been telling you. Let me be direct about expectations for this process. In the first week of practicing these tools, you'll mostly be catching comparisons after they've already happened and the feeling has already landed. That's fine. You're building awareness, not perfection. In the second and third weeks, you'll start catching comparisons as they happen, feeling the trigger in real time and redirecting in the moment. By week 4 and beyond, you'll start catching the comparison before it fully forms. You'll open an app, see a trigger, and your brain will already be asking, "What do I actually want here?" Instead of, "How do I measure up?" That's the rewiring. That's the shift happening in real time inside your neural pathways. This work doesn't make you immune to comparison. Nothing ever will. As long as you're human with a functioning brain, you'll compare, but it fundamentally changes the power dynamic. Right now, comparison controls you. It determines your mood, your self-worth, your life satisfaction, your decisions. After this work, comparison becomes information, data that you can choose to engage with or dismiss. It goes from a verdict to an observation, from a judge sentencing you to a weather report you can note and move on from. You have everything you need: the understanding, the framework, the daily practices. This isn't about becoming someone who doesn't use social media. This is about becoming someone who uses social media without letting it use her. Someone whose sense of self is anchored internally, built on her own values, her own creations, her own conscious choices. Someone who lives a life that's bigger, richer, and more real than anything a feed could ever display. Let's be honest about what's actually happening here. You've spent this hour listening, learning, understanding, and right now, in this exact moment, your brain is already starting to file this under interesting information I'll think about later. You know the pattern, you know it intimately. You'll close this audiobook, you'll pick up your phone, you'll scroll, and within 48 hours, everything you just learned will be buried under a fresh avalanche of comparisons, just like the last podcast, just like the last self-help book, just like the last moment of clarity that faded before you acted on it. You know this. You've done this before. Every book, every podcast, every TED Talk, every moment of "this time I'll change," consumed and then forgotten. Not because the information wasn't good, because you didn't act on it immediately, because understanding without action is just entertainment, and you're already drowning in entertainment. While you hesitate, while you tell yourself you'll start the morning anchor tomorrow, while you decide to maybe try the comparison journal next week, the machine doesn't pause. It's running right now. Your phone is within arm's reach. The algorithm has already queued up your next round of comparisons. And every single hour you wait, your brain logs another 100 data points proving you're not enough. Your self-concept erodes a little more. Your authentic desires get buried a little deeper under someone else's highlight reel. Your life gets a little more curated and a little less lived. You're not staying the same by doing nothing. You're falling behind yourself. The version of you that knows what she actually wants. The version that doesn't need a feed to tell her she's enough. The version that lives fully inside her own life instead of performing it for an audience. She's getting further away with every passive scroll, and you're standing still calling it not the right time. You're telling yourself you need to think about it more. You need the perfect journaling app. You need to finish a few things first. You need to wait for Monday. That's not reason. That's fear dressed up as planning. You don't need a perfect system. You need to wake up tomorrow morning and answer 3 questions before you open a single app. That's the entire first step. That's it. And you've needed to take it for longer than you want to admit. Right now, decide. Are you the person who understands exactly what's happening to her and does nothing about it? Or are you the person who understands what's happening and chooses differently starting tomorrow morning? Not, will you try the framework? Will you be the person who no longer hands her self-worth to an algorithm that was never designed to care about her? Because trying is what you've been doing for years. Trying to feel good about yourself while consuming an endless stream of evidence that you shouldn't. Trying to be confident while measuring yourself against an impossible fictional standard. Trying to be present in your own life while your brain is computing comparisons in the background. Trying doesn't work here. Being works. Being the person who anchors before she scrolls. Being the person who asks why before she opens the app. Being the person who creates more than she consumes. Being the person whose sense of self doesn't depend on what strangers post on the internet. Nobody is coming to fix your feed. No software update is going to make the algorithm care about your well-being. No screen time limit is going to rebuild the identity that's been quietly eroding for years. No influencer is going to post something that finally makes you feel like enough. The only person who can take your sense of self back is you. And every day you don't is a day you choose the shrinking. Not because you're weak, because you didn't act. You know exactly what to do. You've known for the last 60 minutes. The only question is whether you'll do it, or whether you'll scroll past this moment like you scroll past everything else. Don't scroll past this one.